Years ago, I've been using that term to start a lot of these stories. So years ago, I'm presenting when I used to do T equals R, and I'm in London at my very, very close friend Joel Proskowitz gym. Now, here's what I remember. I remember a number of things, but I remember this. We were talking about trigger points. One of these fools who are very ardent against trigger point would be a UK physical therapist who's incredibly engaging, which probably makes people believe what he says. Hilarious. It's like for these guys, if they're not traditionally trained comedians, I mean, it's amazing how funny and engaging they are. So we go do trigger point, and I'm like, you show that there's this referred pain. Remember, a trigger point has to be a taut band. It has to be sensitive. It has to be a twitch, and it has to have this very common referral. So all of this was happening where, let's say I just put my thumb in somebody's shoulder and they felt it in the front. I'm like, all right, so what does your guy say? Because these are people that are listening. This was the right type of thing. I wasn't really banging on anybody. So my guy Alex, I call him Alex Kraz, Kraszewski, I don't know how to say. Very, very typical London name. Anyway, Alex Kraz, he said it was a neurological phenomenon. Fine, it's not a trigger point; it's a neurological phenomenon. Something else that Alex Kraz said in that seminar, which has stuck with me, and I will constantly give him credit, is we were talking about hypermobile, and I have some strong positions on hypermobile, and he made a brilliant, brilliant statement that I echo all the time. There's no such thing as being hypermobile. It's hypostable. And part of the brilliance of that is just in psychology, is that in hypermobility, there's kind of like this dead end. It's like you can't become less mobile. There's other messages that would say it's impossible to have too much mobility. But when you say hypostable, I kind of feel like there's psychology that says you can get better at it. So there's no such thing as hypermobility. I don't care what your Baton score is. You're not hypermobile. You're hypostable, and that gives you hope, I think. Well, there's a family where both of the children, son and daughter, are both very, very hypermobile. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll give you a strong opinion regardless, that if they were both diagnosed with any type of medical condition that would support, I'm not going to say because for privacy, but whatever medical condition that would support hypermobility, I would say there are dozens and thousands and millions of people that have this, but it's undiagnosed because they're strong and they're fit and they have never been susceptible to the fear of any type of medical condition that would allegedly be associated. Well, it's not alleged, it is a very real thing. I've seen plenty of people with this medical condition that are disaster, and they have all sorts of injections and surgeries, etc. And then again, there's people that probably have this and are Olympic athletes because that's the mobility that's of value to be a gymnast or a swimmer or a diver. So the reality is that the brother and the sister have two completely diametric, like 180 differences in how they look at this, where the son is a little bit more guarded in his physical activity because of what he was told maybe when he was 10, 11, 12 years old, where the sister says, in her mind, I don't care, I'm going to do all of these other things. Now, neither of them are particularly robust in their strength or their connective density, and I'm sure both have a list of orthopedic stuff, but you just have to train on a different clip. Maybe an analogy would be, I think yogis should be more like powerlifters and powerlifters should be more like yogis. Not in a personal level, but some of the qualities that one has would be very useful for the other and vice versa. So being able to do exactly what the brother is really reticent, and it's not like he doesn't train at all, and it's not like he's never trained, but when something hurts, his mind works very, very differently than the sister, even though they were both exposed at the same time. So I strongly believe that there's no such thing. Even if you have this medical condition, which it probably is diagnosed by incidental. It's not even something people are always directly looking for. Again, this is not an uncommon thing. You can look it up. I'm just giving that's just where I'm drawing a line for privacy purposes. But there's no such thing as hypermobile. It's irrelevant. And if you're not capable of properly coaching yourself in your training, remember the rules are is good form and does it hurt? So, maybe even just using partial ranges and then constantly increasing those partial ranges. Training slow would obviously have other benefits. Training slow might take wheels off the bar, so your top end force production may be affected. However, definitely have a hypertrophy impact. That hypertrophy is largely from type 1 fibers, because if you're moving with lighter weight slow, you'll focus on type 1 hypertrophy, and type 1 fibers have lots of mitochondria. And when you have lots of mitochondria and you're able to maintain lower demand energy systems, aka aerobic system, your sensitivity to things aren't as heightened. There's value there. And clearly, when you're moving slower into deeper ranges, you're reorganizing collagen fibers, which is the issue to begin with. There's just a different route, a different pace, a different rep scheme, a different loading scheme for somebody that's hypostable. How do you lock them up? How do you get them a little bit stiffer? How do you get them a little bit tighter? Train like a powerlifter. And I wouldn't even be against using assisted gear in powerlifting, like briefs or a singlet, to help force the direction. Maybe you just use it 3 sizes too big, so you're not, getting this catapult impact of the bar off your chest. So it's a wild suggestion as I kind of can bring powerlifting into this weird discussion. So it's not that I'm saying that this is a necessary thing, but how else do you tighten somebody up and just keep the weights proper? No differently than if someone was completely new to training. What would be the acute variables that you would try to control to keep them into a position of success? So no such thing as hypermobility. There's only hypostable. Credit to Alex Kraz, my guy in London. Maybe we'll see you soon.